Here's an example of how stupid Republicans think their uneducated voters are. Sean Hannity was at the Capitol yesterday interviewing Republicans as they take majority and full control of the federal government before they fuck it up again and then blame Democrats for it. And during his interview, Republicans spread this lie.
Republican gets on board with that, and we're going to deliver.
Think of all the slush funds, Sean. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act, that created the inflation that we see because it was trillions of new spending.
It's a common lie from Republicans that the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed under Joe Biden created inflation. It didn't. And we know that Fox News and Sean Hannity isn't going to push back because they need the misinformation and propaganda to make the uneducated believe that inflation is sky high and it was created by the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'll show you just how easy it is to disprove it because the do your own research crowd apparently can't do their own research. Okay, now I love doing research, especially when it's disproving uneducated MAGA lies. So first, I had to find the most recent report on inflation. Now, for the uneducated, everything is fake news unless it comes from the right-wing propaganda machine. So I found this article on Fox Business. Fox Business is Fox News, right? It says inflation rises 2.9% in December in line with expectations. And if you scroll down through the article, you find this interactive chart, inflation over the decade. And it shows you two measures of inflation, CPI and then CPI less food and energy. And you see here, as you move through this chart, that the CPI in December 2024 was 2.9%. You can see here that at the end of Trump's term, after he sicked a mob on the Capitol because of his lies, and then subsequently pardoned all the criminals who assaulted police, that CPI was 1.4%. And when the uneducated rave about Trump's inflation number, they are commonly referring to this number right here, 1.4%, which, yes, it's low. And then Biden takes office and the inflation rate spiked at 9.1% in June 2022. Okay, and at this point, I think we can all agree on three facts. One, that Donald Trump left office with a 1.4% inflation rate. Two, Joe Biden left office with a 2.9% inflation rate. Yes, it's higher. And three, inflation spiked to its highest level under Joe Biden's term in June 2022 at 9.1%. And if we agree on that, we can move forward with this exercise. If not, you live in an alternate reality and nothing I say is going to convince you. And so if what Mike Johnson and the uneducated say is true, you would expect that the Inflation Reduction Act was passed sometime here if it created the inflation. And that brings us to our next question. When was the Inflation Reduction Act passed? Now, it's not hard to do your own research and find out exactly when it was passed. And of course, I went to Fox News because the uneducated don't believe any facts that don't come from any of their propaganda channels. And I found this: Biden signs the $739 billion Inflation Reduction Act into law, slams GOP for voting against the tax and climate deal. And that was signed or published in August 2022. And for reference, August 2022 was sometime around there. And now here's the kicker. After Biden and Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act in August 2022, look at what happens to inflation. It begins to reduce. And remember, high point 9.1 in June 2022, Inflation Reduction Act, August 2022, Biden leaves office with a 2.9% inflation rate. And Republicans like Mike Johnson want you to believe that the Inflation Reduction Act created inflation. And he knows the uneducated will believe it because they will never look into it. They just need something to get angry about. And yes, you can say that 2.9% inflation that Biden left is still high. That's fair. And yes, you can say that when Biden left office, the inflation rate was higher than when Trump left office. All of that is true. I am not denying any of that. Now, Republicans want you to believe that the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed after the high point of 9.1% inflation, created the inflation. And they also want you to believe that Biden and Democrats didn't do anything to reduce inflation. But you see, they don't talk about that in the right-wing echo chamber because it doesn't fit the narrative. Facts are hard for the uneducated.